Hi, my name is Ginger Dewey, and I work for ReadSpeaker as the Educational Development Manager. The video that you're about to watch is on 5 benefits for using ReadSpeaker. The first thing that we know is no two students learn the same way. Just because we learned one way does not mean that they're going to learn the same way. The universal design for learning that you see on the screen talks about the fact that it is based on scientific insights, provides equal opportunities, works for everyone, and can be adjusted for individual needs. With that said, it's allowing the student to make the choices that they need so that they can learn best. Number 2, vocabulary. When you look at our curriculums in things like English, history, sociology, psychology, anatomy and physiology, medical areas, engineering, criminal justice, and the list goes on, you encounter words that are multisyllables, and students are not necessarily pronouncing the words correctly when they're reading them on their own. I'll give you a personal example. When I was in grade school, I had the word superlative, and I went almost a whole week pronouncing it as superlative. And that's because when you're learning how to read, you develop sight words, and super was a sight word for me. So when I found out it was superlative, that super was actually 2 syllables, I was very enlightened, and I haven't forgotten the word since then. But our students encounter the same things when they are reading. So they may be reading something and pronouncing it one way, you're pronouncing it differently in class, and they're not making the connection. In ReadSpeaker, you can have the words highlighted as they are read to you. So you're both reading it and seeing it at the same time. So you're building that connection between the written and the oral word. Therefore, you are increasing your retention of what you're learning because you're now pronouncing the words correctly. On the screen, you see some very large words and some smaller ones, but they could very easily be mispronounced. We have to make certain that our students are pronouncing them correctly when they're reading. This helps them build the comprehension that they need to increase their learning. As we move to number 3, first let's look at a little bit of data. The Office of Civil Rights has said that students with disabilities in higher education are facing significant hardships and other barriers due to COVID-19 threatening their access to education, including through remote learning and basic necessities. Chalkbeat says that the typical student was behind where they normally should be by 3 to 6 points in reading, 8 to 12 points in math at the end of last school year. And younger students were faring worse than their older peers. McKinsey also noticed that the dropout rate for 8th to 12th graders is increasing because efforts are not being made to re-engage them in learning. This brings up number 3, focus tools. In the traditional classroom, instructors or teachers can see when students are about to disengage, so they change things up. Generally, this is between every 10 to 15 minutes that you have to do that change up. In an online or blended classroom, or when the student is at home doing their homework, they're behind a computer screen and you can't see their faces, so you don't know when they are starting to disengage. ReadSpeaker has many focus tools, and it is the student's responsibility to re-engage, so they need to know about these focus tools. One is settings, to where you can change it to look the way you want it to look. Another is changing the voice that you're using to listen with. Some students prefer a male or a female. Some prefer a British accent or an American accent. The list goes on. Another tool is the reading ruler, and the reading ruler is an electronic version of a note card. Another electronic version of an old tool is a sheet of paper with a hole cut in it. We call that a page mask. And we have many more tools, but the students need to know they're there in order for them to use it. Before moving into number 4, Let's look at the data that's on the screen. First off, dyslexia affects 5 to 15% of Americans, and ADHD affects 4.4% of U.S. adults and 11% of children. 21.6% of U.S. residents speak a language other than English at home. When we think about this, I like to think about Abraham Lincoln's famous quote that said, "When I read aloud, two senses catch the idea. First, I see what I read. Second, I hear it, and therefore I remember it." Abraham Lincoln was a bimodal advocate before we even had the term. Bimodal learning simply means that we are using sight and hearing, or two different senses, together. And studies have shown that when you use two or more senses together, you have a higher retention rate of the material. And when you think about that data, the student who is ADD, they may need to use an enlarged text to help them focus in, just like a student would who is having difficulty with the subject so they can get down to those granular details that they're missing. Second language learners may want to use a little bit slower reading speed so they catch it. But all of these students are using some form of bimodal learning. Number 5, your teaching style does not change. You still teach the same way you always taught. The ReadSpeaker tools are there to assist all students in learning the way they need to learn. Because we want our students to succeed and leave our class knowing what they need to know, we need to be able to give them those tools without having to change what we're doing. Thank you for allowing me to give you 5 reasons why ReadSpeaker tools are awesome for our students. Please visit us at readspeaker.com/education.